And we are now ready with all of our members.
Sorry about that.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Barrie Police Service Board meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. The Barrie Police Service acknowledged the sacred land has been the site of human activity for 15,000 years. This land is the territory of the Huron-Wendat and the Anishinaabeg Nation. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture. We also recognize the enduring presence of Indigenous peoples on this land and are committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. Miigwech. Thank you. The agenda was distributed in advance. A motion to approve today's agenda. Mr. Khan, Mayor Lehman, those in favor? Thank you. Is there any conflicts of interest to be declared with respect to today's agenda by any of the members? Seeing none, and included in our board package was the minutes of our meeting of October the 21st, 2021. A motion to approve those minutes. Mr. Khan, second Mayor Lehman, any comments, concerns? Those in favor? Seems everyone. Thank you. I'll hand it over to you, Chief, to introduce to the board an individual who is no stranger to this board, but to recognize her most recent promotion. Chief, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and board members and members of our community that are joining us for our Police Services Board meeting. It is great pleasure to introduce Inspector Valerie Gates, fondly known as Val. She commenced her career in 1997 with the Peel Regional Police Service. And in 2002, she decided to return to her roots with the City of Barrie and joined our police service. She joined the Crimes Against Persons Unit in 2005, and she was promoted to the rank of Sergeant in October of 2009, at which time she was transferred to our Community Services Unit, where she was involved in the development of the Junior Constables Camp, Home Safe Run, and worked to introduce the Collaborate Barrie situational table. She did return to the Crimes Against Persons Unit in 2015, where she worked to build the Child Advocacy Center, and she has been the lead in developing our human trafficking protocol for the Barrie area. She was also instrumental in conducting the sexual assault review for the Barrie Police Service, and was also instrumental in helping myself and others at a national development of a sexual assault framework on our response as a police service. She is also continues to support and encouraging reporting of sexual violence, and has resulted in developing an app called Project Speak Out, which was just launched recently. She was promoted in 2018 as the staff sergeant, and she was selected to work in executive services, where she worked in policy and planning. She was part of the development of our current strategic plan. She has worked on the community safety and well-being plan for the City of Barrie, and most recently involved in the systemic review of our organizational culture and systems, and we will be hearing about that shortly. Val sits on the chair of the Child Advocacy Center in Simcoe, Muskoka, and is the vice chair of the Women and Children's Shelter of Barrie. In 2021, this year, she received the Ontario Women in Law Enforcement, as well as the International Women in Law Enforcement Excellent in Performance Award. So we congratulated her previous on those. Val also holds a BA degree in philosophy and has a certificate of women in leadership from Cornell University. Congratulations, and Val, welcome to the senior leadership team.
Thank you.
We'll just take one picture if we. And if you can.
Congratulations, Inspector Gates, and thank you for your continued service. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda is Inspector Burke. I think it's hard to tell who's on the line or on the call with respect to a report on our systemic review. Inspector, are you there?
The magic appearing at. Actually, I'm going to be presenting this today. Inspector Burke is on holidays.
Okay.
Switch rooms really quickly, and I'll just get Victoria to pull that up for us. And I obviously will not introduce myself, but I will introduce Victoria is also in the room with us here. She was instrumental in the development of our systemic review, so thank you, Victoria, as always. So today we're just going to be presenting an overview of that systemic review of our organizational culture and processes. So our review started in July of 2020, and the purpose really was to assess the organizational culture, practices, and policies of the Variance service. We were guided by 8 specific goals, which were aimed to identify areas of improvement or success regarding our response, our processes, as well as our engagement with racialized and vulnerable groups. Throughout this process, we collected data in both quantitative and qualitative forms. We evaluated a number of different areas within the Barrie Police Service, and so our report is really a comprehensive overview of the findings that were discovered by our committee. And again, this committee really should be applauded for the work that they have done on this review. The task of gathering and reviewing and interpreting all the data collected was a significant undertaking. I already mentioned Victoria, there were other members involved as well, and Jeanette Mays from our media unit was also a really big piece of this. So there were multiple channels used to collect our quantitative and qualitative data. That include environmental scans, database analysis, internal and external focus groups, surveys, and we did bring in a third-party consultant to conduct some of our external focus groups. We analyzed over 140 internal procedures. We held more than 20 internal focus groups and 10 external focus groups. We reviewed human resource recruitment and retention practices, in-house training material, and records from our professional standards. Our members were also provided opportunity to complete the Intercultural Development Inventory Survey, as well as multiple other surveys. So this is the chart that we developed sort of at the start of the review. And it really was to give ourselves some deliverables and so that we could provide feedback in a timely fashion. So we broke the review up into 4 phases over the period of July 20th to June 2021. However, we continued making changes to that report right up till about October 2021. So basically at the start, members of our service were canvassed to determine who was interested in participating in the review process, and they were either assigned to the steering committee or asked to participate in internal focus groups. So as we started moving along and collecting the data and conducting those internal focus groups, we started to see the development of about 5 themes. Five themes for sure. So those themes that we started to see were leadership, organizational culture, organizational disconnect, organizational maturity, and organizational reputation. And so when reading the report, you will find that we tried our best to separate all the data and information into those 5 themes. So the leadership recommendation, and really the goal in the leadership theme, was to address concerns around systemic barriers to achieving leadership roles and the role of the leadership team in promoting, encouraging, and consulting with a variety of demographic groups. We did have a lot of recommendations, over 30, we're up to 33. And so rather than going through every single one, we wanted to highlight those that we're already starting to implement. And we are open to questions about any of the other ones afterwards, but the ones that we're starting to implement, recommendation 1.1, 1.2, and 1.6, really the mere fact that we're doing this review is really starting to put into play some of those recommendations under the leadership. So the culture recommendations, the ones that we've started to sort of look at, we broke that up obviously into formal and informal organizational. So the formal is purposely established through our policies and operating procedures, and informal reviews the day-to-day experiences of members. So we looked at both qualitative and quantitative data sources to clarify those findings. And as you can see, we have started to implement things such as reviewing each document for neutrality and accessibility for AOTA compliance, policies and procedures relating to accessibility, being applied equitably across the organization. So these things we have started to address. We're looking at developing a standardized internal survey with a structured approach being developed for consistent EDI focus survey and a standardized internal member census. We have also reviewed all policies and procedures to ensure that they are AOTA compliant. Some additional recommendations under culture, you can see here, enhancing and increased diversity and inclusion related measurements throughout the service. We have introduced, as mentioned, the IDI inventory and continue to structure standardized internal surveys for consistent and measurable findings around diversity and inclusion. Reviewing existing policies and procedures to address sexist, racist, anti-immigration, and homophobic remarks or jokes by VPS members. We have reviewed all of these through the systemic review process. Improve member reporting mechanism and remove the stigmas around that third party or around reporting. And so this is a big undertaking, and one that we've brought in a third party legal counsel to help us review and sort of strengthen some of our internal reporting mechanisms to look at different ways of how we can do that and support those coming forward with any concerns. We want to develop a comprehensive internal and external communication plan. As mentioned, Jenna Mays did sit on our systemic review committee. We will ensure that all the actions that we're implementing and moving forward, everything will be transparent, not only internally, but externally, and that reporting back is a really important piece. Recommendation 2.13, conduct internal employee surveys around engagement and morale. And when we conduct these surveys, we're recommending to include demographic questions so that responses can be examined by demographic to identify differences in perceptions by different populations. So again, we've started to collect this data through internal surveys, and we will build on that through yearly EDI surveys or however that might look, as well as an internal member sensitive. So disconnect, really what we meant here, we're starting to see sort of disconnect between ranks. So I think what that equates to is we really need to work on our communication. But some of the recommendations that we've started to work on is enhance increased opportunities to gather feedback from different groups of employees, including roundtable discussions with the chief. After each opportunity, we want to report back to our members so that they know that they were heard and that actions are being taken. So really at the onset of this review, this started to become obvious pretty quickly. So we went to Chief Greenwood right away and said, we think it would be a great idea to focus on that middle management and perhaps start having some roundtable discussions and some face-to-face time with you. And so over this past year, Chief Greenwood has met with every single staff sergeant within the service, and she's working through every single sergeant. So this is something that we will continue to do through this review. So organizational maturity. We need to focus on diversity training and resources. So already in progress, we want to expand educational opportunity for all officers to have a strength and understanding of the diverse populations within our communities. You're going to hear from our EDI committee right after me, but they have created an internal EDI database that offers members access to video and printable resources and professional development opportunities. which has been amazing. People are taking advantage of that, and we're reaching out into the community to get feedback from them to make sure that we're sharing valuable information. The service has also implemented several workshops, such as community policing against racial trauma, and some members are taking it upon themselves to seek external resources that broaden their understanding. We do know that many members have taken the course at the University of Alberta, the Indigenous Canada course. So reputation, this sort of addresses collaborative partnerships and enhancing community policing as a whole with our diverse population. So what we've already done, we've addressed through the creation of the centralized internal equity, diversity, and inclusion portal that I just spoke to develop that centralized online resource for BPS. Really just within the last month, we probably launched that. So that's really starting to gain some traction. 5.4, we're starting to look at this through the services involvement with the City of Barrie CSWB plan. We now also have a CSWB officer and a CSWB teams. So that's how we plan on looking into 5.4. So next steps. So this report has gone up to Chief Greenwood. She's accepted this report. You know, we're really advocating that we need agents of change and that our leaders must accept that role and engage in this process. You know, we had a lot of community members volunteer their time in external focus groups. A lot of our internal members put a lot of time into this and came forward with information. So we want to make sure that they realize and understand that their voices are being heard and that we are going to take action to improve. So Chief Greenwood has accepted this report, and we have suggested that it be assigned to the appropriate LT members so that action can be taken. So we've gone ahead and created a motion. We'll skip the motion for now. We can come back to that if Chief Greenwood so desires. But we'll just open it up to questions before going back to that motion, if there are any per se.
Questions from the board, please. Not seeing any. I'd just like to comment if
I just.
Oh, sorry.
I had a question, Mr. Chair. Sorry.
Thank you, Lynn.
First of all, just thank you for the presentation and for the report. It was very comprehensive, and I certainly learned a lot from reading it. I'm really happy about the highlighted action items where things are happening right away, that we're taking action and we're not waiting on this. It is very important. The question I have is just in terms of evaluation, and we did a number of surveys to understand people's attitudes and behavior, and now we're implementing these various education components and programs. So will we have a follow-up survey to see if attitudes have changed as we move forward with this work that we're doing?
Absolutely. We plan on doing that yearly. We do have 2 members trained now in IDI within our service, so they can distribute that as opposed to going and using third party. So Victoria is one of our trained members. So we hope that's our benchmark measure, and we'll be measuring that yearly internally.
Thank you. That's great to hear.
Mayor Lehman, please.
Sorry about that. I had actually a similar question about how we measure success with the community. So I understand the internal impact, and first of all, I should say as well, thank you very much for the comprehensiveness of both the process to engage so many members of our service, but also understanding sort of the context in which this lands. That there's sort of multiple layers to this, of course, and as you read through the findings of the focus groups and so forth, you start to understand both the perceptions internally and I guess the the expectations that that our own members have, and I do think the reporting back and that last, or the first bullet on that last slide is very important about commitment to change. I guess my question would be how we measure the same thing externally. Whether and how we report out externally. I mean, obviously there is a board process here and a public reporting of the impact of the systemic review as we go forward. But I'm curious in knowing how we will measure success in terms of the community that we serve.
Yes, thank you. So we use the base measure really when we start out the community safety survey that we send out yearly. So we will build on that. You know, there is some talk around directly reaching out to those external agencies that were involved in the external focus groups, developing another survey that they could give us feedback yearly. So that's something we will be considering as well. So right now, really our baseline measure is that community safety and well-being survey. So that will be our yearly measure.
Okay, and if I could make a brief comment, then I think it's very important as we, if we are relying on that survey, and it's, you know, a survey is as good an instrument as any, that we ensure that we're receiving full and honest feedback, obviously through a survey, and that's a very difficult thing to measure, because, you know, when somebody puts something on paper, they are committing to you know, sharing that in a format that, you know, it's anonymous. We may have no issues whatsoever in terms of receiving the full feedback there. But I think it's not a bad idea to augment it with conversations and communication with the community. And I know that so much of that is a focus of the community safety and well-being plan. So that ongoing engagement, I mean, one thing I took away from the systemic review here is this is an opportunity for our service to turn outward to the community and engage many of those stakeholder organizations on an ongoing basis. And I know there are many that we do anyway, but I'd be interested in seeing more as we consider how we keep the plan moving and make progress on its findings, how we are sort of ground truthing the progress that we assume that we're making. So this is probably a long way of saying, as we have this item on future agendas, I would be interested in having those presentations or that information include some commentary or discussion around what our community is saying. And then similarly, how our own officers feel that relationship is going. Do they feel like they are getting support, or they are, you know, constantly in conflict? Do they feel like there's a solid working relationship, or there are barriers to that working relationship? And, you know, there are many organizations in our community with which, and at some of them we've had a hand in setting up, the Child Advocacy Center, Collaborate Barrie, and obviously the tight working relationship with the shelter system and organizations like CMHA. But hearing from them, and then hearing from our own people as to how that relationship is working, I think is going to be important information in terms of the success, both of this initiative and the community safety and well-being plan. Thanks for that, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Khan, please.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. Inspector, thank you for the presentation. More of a comment, Mr. Chair. I'm recognizing internally for myself the importance of the context through which we, you know, receive this information, both as a board, as a service, as well as a community. You know, change isn't easy, and oftentimes it's perceived to be easier to leave things alone and keep them as they were, you know, even if it's at the expense of what is right. And I guess my observation or my comment is around the fact that I'm not sure in terms of a wide scale that those who have participated in this exercise, this initiative, both locally, internally, and externally, will necessarily receive the acknowledgement of the effort and the work that's being done today or in the near future. It might be generational, but I just wanted to congratulate those who have participated because it's necessary, it's right, and it's definitely acknowledged, even if it's not widely acknowledged just yet. So thank you for the effort that you've put in. Definitely appreciated.
Thanks, Mr. Khan. Any other questions from the board? On behalf of the board, Inspector Gates, we'd like to thank you and your team for an excellent, comprehensive, detailed report. The presentation, was only 20 minutes, but we know the detail that was behind that report, and we've reviewed it, and a great deal of time, effort has gone into it, and the board appreciates it, and I know we look forward to a follow-up. There is a motion in our package with respect to the report, a motion to receive the Barrie Police Service Systemic Review and Organizational Culture Systems Report and direct the chief to provide regular updates on the implementation of the recommendations contained within the report. Would I have moved by Mr. Khan?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Strawn. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Great. Again, thank you, Inspector Gates, for a great job. Chief, I'll hand it over to you to introduce our next presenter with respect to our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. Please, Chief.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I think this is a good segue from our systemic review recommendations into the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. Staff Sergeant Linda Morehouse will be presenting on this topic as the chair of the committee. She entered policing in 1994 after spending 5 years as a reporter for various Ontario newspaper. She has worked in almost all areas of our service, including criminal investigations, risk management, courts, and most recently in fleets and infrastructure. Linda is now back overseeing policy and research, where she previously spent 4 years as a sergeant. Linda has a long history of volunteering her time in the community with specific projects. She is one of the original members of our Corporate Image Committee and is currently the chair of the Barrie Food Bank Board. She has been a member of the Ontario Association of Chiefs Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Committee since 2015, and next month we'll move to the position of vice chair to co-chair. Linda has recently been nominated for the provincial Serving with Pride 2S LGBTQ+ Visibility Award in recognition for her efforts for further visibility and inclusion within law enforcement and within our community. She received her designation as the Canadian Certified Inclusion Specialist in 2020 through the Canadian Centre of Diversity and Inclusion. And I now pass it over to Linda, please. And she will be sharing her screen.
Welcome, Staff Sergeant.
Thank you. Good morning, and thanks for the opportunity to provide this overview of the priorities, goals, and action items of the Barrie Police Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. This presentation will demonstrate how our goals and actions overlap with areas of the Barrie Police 2020 to 22 strategic plan and how it will provide structure to the committee for the next year. Also see some commonalities with the committee, excuse me, and the systemic review recommendations that were just presented. The EDI committee has an established terms of reference with our ultimate vision to build an authentically inclusive organization. Our mandate is to enhance inclusivity and diversity by engaging our members and our community through strengthened partnerships. And our goal is through policing excellence, we strive to create an equitable, inclusive, and diverse service, utilizing partnerships and best practices within the community. Diving deeper into our terms of reference and responsibilities, the following are specific categories for our priorities. BPS for knowledge of equity, diversity, and inclusion, community engagement and outreach, and accountability. Let's take a deeper look at each of these goals and the action items associated with them in the next few slides. Starting with Barrie Police member knowledge of EDI, we have 3 goals outlined. The first is to understand membership composition. This will help us recognize skills, experiences, and abilities that can strengthen the overall performance of the organization. And it can help improve methods of communication and knowledge transfer, both internally and during interactions with the public or community partners. The second goal is to offer support for diversification in member recruitment and retention initiatives. Paired with an understanding of the membership and of the community, the committee can provide data support and ideas for recruitment and retention initiatives. By leveraging our contacts, we can offer resources to cast a wider net for candidates. Our third goal for this category is to equip members with EDI knowledge and skills. This will ensure that members have the confidence to navigate through equity, inclusion, and diversity situations in both the internal and external work environment. In order to achieve these goals, we have identified action items to implement over the coming months. These action items will help us set key performance indicators and establish measurable benchmarks that demonstrate how the committee, the membership, and the service are evolving year over year. These action items are EDI-focused questions as or part of an annual BPS member internal survey, either as a standalone or part of a standardized survey. Continued development of an internal EDI resource portal for BPS members. The committee launched the portal last month, and we will continually build to it. Provide support to the Human Resources Unit in the creation of diversified recruitment initiatives. For example, we can take part in career awareness events at Georgian College and target youth centers for interaction. We will offer quarterly professional development opportunities that will be recorded and stored in the centralized EDI portal. A digitally accessible diversity calendar that is being updated regularly and lists cultural celebrations and recognized days, both locally and internationally. These are all items that also strongly align with priority 3 of the strategic plan, organizational excellence and sustainability. Looking at our second category, community engagement and outreach, we have 2 goals outlined. The first, increased officer visibility that aligns with the EDI mandate. We hope to engage our members and our community through strengthened partnerships. Continuing to be proactive in our approach to community activities will help achieve this goal. The second goal is to build upon existing partnerships and implement new ones. This will help strengthen our 2-way communication with the community. It will also offer opportunity to determine new ways the service can support the growing and changing population structure of Barrie. These goals align the EDI with strategic priority 1 and 2 of the Barrie Police Strategic Plan. Priority 1 addresses aspects of crime prevention, community safety, and law enforcement, and priority 2 explores community engagement and collaboration. The following action items work towards achieving the goals outlined. Annually attend a minimum of 4 to 6 community-focused events, and that really is a minimum. I think we do many more than that. Invite open communication with Barrie Police members and the community. This could include town hall presentations or virtual drop-in sessions, online information sessions, exploring EDI-focused questions for the annual community safety survey, and creating new methods for community feedback regarding EDI. Additional action items under this priority includes expanding external EDI communication, which will initially be through the introduction of an EDI information page on barriepolice.ca, and BPS participation in social media awareness campaigns such as #ItStarts. The EDI committee will continue to develop and maintain relationships with community partners and provide annual EDI progress updates to the BPS leadership team. Looking at our third priority, accountability, we once again have 2 goals as shown. The first being to be transparent to members and the community in the efforts EDI administers to achieve its mandate. And the second is to support continued growth and awareness of EDI through Barrie Police. These goals align with strategic priority 2 and 3 of our services strategic plan. The following action items have been established to achieve the goals outlined. Provide an annual update regarding EDI progress to the BPS leadership. Continue to update the EDI portal for members. Present the rationale for a permanent EDI position within BPS. The introduction of a permanent position will solidify our ability to measure, monitor, and continually improve EDI initiatives with a dedicated resource. This will ensure accountability to BPS membership, community partners, and the public at large. Support recommendations from the Systemic Review of Organizational Culture and Systems, and support the review of policy, procedures, and in-house training to ensure that language is inclusive, equitable, and respectful of Barrie Police diversity and the community. The committee has already implemented some of the action items presented to you today. This includes one of our new professional development opportunities where the EDI committee held a lunch and learn session in collaboration with Georgian College. Members participated in a question and answer session with students from the Indigenous Studies program at Georgia. The session offered the opportunity to have open dialogue about sensitive issues in a safe space and included discussions about current issues, common assumptions between police and Indigenous communities. We distributed a participant feedback survey and received a large volume of positive response from members, indicating they would support more sessions in the future. Additionally, the EDI committee has introduced a centralized EDI portal that is electronically accessible by members. This portal is dynamic and will continually grow as a member resource. Currently, it offers information about the committee, volunteerism opportunities, print and video EDI resources, access to the diversity calendar, information about courses. And the most recent action was the collaboration of our service and the Barrie Native Friendship Center to light the Tree of Hope in recognition of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls this past Sunday at the campus. Overall, these priorities, actions, and goals are presented as points of legitimacy. The committee is growing and gaining traction after almost 3 years of work. We are now positioned for a consistent year-over-year evaluation of the committee's achievements, and we will be able to adapt as our service and the city of Barrie continue to evolve. Further, this committee will aid the service's continued growth in professional, accountable, and sustainable policing services for policing excellence to ensure a safe and secure community. I thank you, and at this time, if you have any questions, thoughts, or comments, I'd be happy to receive them.
Thank you, Staff Sergeant. I'll defer my comments till we questions from the board, please. Mr. Khan.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Sergeant. Appreciate the presentation. One of the things that was going through my mind as you were presenting, and then you actually touched on it, was the Georgian College Open Dialogue Lunch and Learn. And I'm not suggesting necessarily more lunch and learns, but more the open dialogue component. You talk about opportunities to attend ward town hall meetings, etc. There's the internal component within your staffing complement, and then there's the external component within the community. I'm just curious of what other additional opportunities there are to have perhaps less scripted, and I'm not suggesting yours are scripted, but again, a less scripted open dialogue with the community. I know that we have engagement opportunities through volunteerism, for example, in the COPS program. I don't know how much uptake there is because of what the mandate is to that COPS program itself, but other opportunities just really for dialogue, because you mentioned in this report all of the equity, inclusivity, diversity topics, really to open it up in a forum around that, if you will, framework within the community in terms of what job opportunities there are, what volunteerism opportunities there are, really just engagement in the dialogue to build that relationship with the community. I know that that is the intent, I'm in terms of the outreach and the actual engagement with the community is what I'm interested in. And I'm sorry, my camera froze.
Thank you for the question. So you're bang on in terms of dialogue. You know, that's the key to building this relationship both internally and certainly externally. Without dialogue and open communication, we're not going to get that education and that understanding and that acceptance, you know, both internally and externally. We have a number of committee members who sit on various local committees, such as the Local Immigration Partnership, the Simcoe and the Muskoka Black community, and we're in touch with various groups like Shack's World and Making Change. So by having people in those positions to interact with those different groups, I think is a great gateway to getting more of that action going with those different groups. That's how it all starts. You make those, you build those partnerships, you build those relationships, and then the dialogue starts. Why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? How can we reach this group? Why don't we try this information session? So it's a growing process, it's a learning process, but by having those people in place in those key areas of the community, I think that's how we're going to be able to expand on the initiatives that we have, and get the dialogue and get the feedback and make it go from there.
If I may just follow up real quick, Mr. Chair. If I could copy and paste my previous comment from Inspector Gates' presentation, I would, or I will at this point. I also want to just acknowledge my awareness that towards you and your colleagues who you've been working on this with, that personally, I wouldn't want to put any of your colleagues into being a poster child against their will for the initiative, because I want to be sensitive to the fact that, you know, this is a transition time. You know, I know that your organization and your committee is working towards what you wish things could look like or what you expect things will look like down the road, but we have to acknowledge that as well, that there's personal, we need to respect each other's privacy, et cetera. So going out and being the poster child could also have some unwelcomed responses from some members of the community who may not be necessarily mature enough and ready to embrace your initiative. So just how do we ensure the protection of those involved from a personal privacy perspective, as well as go out into the community and show that we want to have this dialogue? Maybe it's a tough question. Maybe I need to clarify the question.
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure where you're coming from in terms of the poster child direction.
So we're talking about sensitive topics. We're talking about diversity. We're talking about gender identity. We're talking about things that are relevant in the community, and there are those who are taking the initiative to be uncomfortable or to be comfortable. And I don't know what it is. I'm not there, so I don't know what it is. What I'm saying, though, is that we want to have this discussion and we want to be open and we want to have this change and impact. And we will be at the mercy of some people who we see on social media, we see out in the community. They are not yet ready to be respectful. So I want to acknowledge the fact that, you know, that this is the right move. This is a bold move. This is a brave move for some. It might be an uncomfortable move for others. And I'm appreciative of it. I also want to be respectful of it. And so what can we do to ensure that we are open and we are welcoming, and at the same time we're not, I don't know what the word is. I'm not sure what I'm looking for, to be quite honest with you. I'm just saying I want to be conscientious of all of those who are involved, both internally within the service and within the community. I don't know where else to go with that statement, to be honest with you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khan, for your comments. I think the work that we're doing with our systemic review, the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee, the work and the participation through the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, the Barrie Anti-Racism Committee, the work that we're doing in partnership as we move forward to be included within our community will make the difference, and we will continue to work in these efforts, and we will have those tough conversations.
Thank you, Chief. Mayor Lehman, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And again, thank you to the team and thanks for the presentation. I appreciate it. I'm just going to make one comment and I have a related question. I appreciated the focus on human resources and diversity and recruiting. I do think that's an area where naturally, I think all police services, I could say maybe all emergency services, have been challenged over the years to recruit from certain communities and to end up looking like the communities we serve. That's an early area of focus, according to your presentation, and I would like to hear a little bit more on what the service is doing right away and in terms of trying to recruit from more diverse communities.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for that comment. Mr. Stephen Bound, who is our HR manager, we do have a dedicated recruitment team that is part of our human resources area, and many members or a couple of our members from that team are involved in the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Committee, and our target, as with the city of Barrie, we're looking to ensure that we are reflective of our community, and we are seeking partnerships with the communities to ensure that policing, whether it be as a police officer or other roles in the Barrie Police Services, are attractive to individuals that are living in our community and are reflective of our community. So that is one of our strategies, and that is linked to our strategic plan as we move forward in the next year and so.
Okay, I guess the related question would be, will the board be receiving updates on how that's going? How would we receive updates on the impact of our attempt to broaden our recruiting strategies? Chief, you're on mute.
It looks like our Staff Sergeant Morehouse, her hand is raised, so I will let her respond to some of those things, but then I'll respond from a corporate perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Just with respect to the recruitment initiatives, it's clear that we need to go a little earlier than people who are already in college. And so we're casting the net a little wider to approach youth facilities, high schools, and sort of plant the seed a little bit earlier that policing or police organizations is a viable career option for people. And it doesn't necessarily that they have to go into the sworn member route. We have lots of other job opportunities within the organization that don't require you to be a police officer. But again, through some of those relationships that the committee members have built in the community, we are reaching out to those groups and we're trying to make the connection between our recruiting unit to get in there and present these opportunities, to that audience. And then if I may, I just want to comment briefly, Mr. Khan, with respect to your comments as well. It's very important that we be transparent, but we also be very genuine in our efforts. And you never know when you're talking to somebody what their background is, where they come from. And I think as long as with every action, with every goal that we have, we remain transparent and we remain genuine in our efforts, we will eventually achieve what we want to.
If I might, Mr. Chair, I think Staff Sergeant nailed exactly what was going on inside my head. So thank you for that follow-up. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? On behalf of the board, Staff Sergeant, I'd like to thank you, and I'd like you to extend that thank you to your entire committee. Clearly, a lot of work has gone in, 3 years of work to get to this point. It is vital work that is required within our, excuse me, within our organization, and we appreciate that work. So thank you, and we look forward to a follow-up with respect to the action items and the measurables, and once again, thanks very much. Deputy Chief Johnston, wonder if you could introduce your team with respect to pre-charge diversion. Chief?
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to introduce two of our members along with Deputy Chief Johnson, who you already know, but Constable Blair King began his policing career in Peel in 2004 and shortly after joined the Barrie Police Service in 2007. He's served in a variety of different areas within our organization. He was a team leader on our tactical support unit, and he is a remote piloted aircraft systems operator and continues to be very active in our search management role for looking for our missing persons. He is currently assigned to frontline uniform responsibilities, and he does look forward to his new position and role as a offender management in January. Also presenting today is Curtis Graber, constable in our knowledge management unit. His role is to take ever expanding requirements for data and information and creating systems that are easily understood and adopted by our frontline members. And we in turn create real-time reporting structures for the leadership team. He's responsible for the creation and deployment of several systems that are used by our service on a daily basis, including our mental health tracking system of calls for service, our use of force statistics, risk management, case management, and the Violence Against Women Case Review Project. Prior to joining the Barrie Police Service in 2014, Curtis worked in IT, developing solutions for organizations such as Bell Canada, Pepsi, and the Government of Australia. So I now pass it on to Deputy Chief Johnston.
Thank you, Chief, and I will make my comments brief as the board's already heard enough from me today. I did want to specifically thank these two officers. Blair and Curtis have operationalized this, and it's so important that we have people like this because it encourages that buy-in throughout the organization. I'll quickly speak to the fact that the Ministry of the Attorney General approached us to gauge our interest in a diversion program. Again, we looked at this as an opportunity. We're aware of the strong research and evidence supporting restorative justice conferences, and this is a way of embedding it in our response to low harm, high volume crimes. We view this as an opportunity to reduce victimization and the psychological impacts that come along with that. It allows us to partner with local service agencies. And there's also evidence to support potential reduced recidivism by those high volume individuals that continually commit that low harm crime. And as you will hear, increased efficiency with our operational members, allowing for our finite resources to be targeted higher at high harm areas to be more effective. And to deliver this message, the two officers are going to present to you, and my thanks to them both for the response so far from our organization. Over to you.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm Blair King. I'm going to be presenting the first portion of the diversion. We began our rollout with the first of our platoons on Sunday, and we just finished up this morning with the last of our frontline officers. Next. Some stats, general stats. So from Toronto Police, since from 2013 to 2019, Toronto Police laid nearly 20,000 theft under charges. Next slide. Out of those 20,000 charges, only 2 resulted in any sort of custodial sentence. The remainder were either diverted or withdrawn. Just as an example of our current procedure here, if we attend for a shoplifter at a department store, officers are going to continue the arrest. They're going to provide release documents with 2 copies. Gather witness statements, store security video, and a copy of the receipt. They also have an arrest report to do, and they'll create a case in evidence.com where they'll upload all the body worn camera footage, documents, videos, and everything into evidence.com. They also review the body worn camera footage and transcribe and potentially redact some of that video for court. They'll scan their notes, and there's potentially a case management follow-up and a Crown follow-up. The total average time on a simple shop theft is approximately 3.5 hours currently. Under adult diversion, the same arrest at a department store. If the arrest is lawful, police will continue the arrest, and then we'll divert the accused, and there'll be a simple arrest report. The time spent from start to finish is approximately 45 minutes. The following charges can be diverted currently: theft under 5,000, possession of stolen property under and over 5,000, mischief under and over 5,000, fraud under and over 5,000, take motor vehicle without consent, cause disturbance, food, travel, accommodation fraud, possession of identity documents, and the administration of justice, which has the fail to comply and fail to appears, as long as they relate to one of the above mentioned charges that are already divertible. Some more stats for you. So in 2020, in Barrie Police, we had 1,184 charges that were laid that could have been considered for an option for diversion. At 3.5 hours each, that equates to 4,144 frontline officer hours. If we diverted 75% of those charges, you can see in line 3 there, that would have freed up approximately 2,442 frontline officer hours that we could have been doing other calls with. Further financial savings equate to storage with evidence.com with all the evidence that we wouldn't be uploading. Also savings with overtime court appearances, time savings for records departments, and time and cost savings for the entire court system. I'm going to pass it over to Kurt now. He's going to explain the actual process that the officers do when they do diversion.
So right now we've got a system in place that is completely accessible from the cruisers. So as soon as the officer leaves the Walmart, for example, after they divert somebody, they're going to be able to do this entirely either from their work phone or from the computer that's inside of the car. So they don't need to come back to the station. That's for this reason. And we've made it, I like to call it Fisher Price kind of usability, that it makes it really very straightforward to understand. As an example, that green plus sign, probably where you go to add a new one. So when the officer clicks on that plus sign rather, they're going to see the pertinent information that Elizabeth Fry Society is going to need to see. So what we created on the back end is a portal that the Barrie Police use. The Elizabeth Fry Society also uses. So it's not like filtered information that we're providing them. It's the exact same window into that information. We're also going to be expanding this into the Barrie Native Friendship Center as well to serve the Indigenous people that get diverted. So on this screen, it's really just basic information here. The occurrence, the charge that was diverted, how they are. We also track if the officer believes that there is alcohol or substance abuse issues with the offender, as well as mental health issues that were perceived. And then when they hit save on that form they see here, and they've completed their notes, and they're done. We're going to use this same form for YCGA for youth diversions as well too. So if you notice on that box, there's an option for email addresses for a parent and for the accused, if they have an email address. And if they do, when this gets submitted, they're going to get an email with all the information, and it pulls, their name and the charge and everything, and puts it in the appropriate spot in the email. And at the same time, Elizabeth Fry gets notified that they have a new customer's not the right word, but it's escaping me right now. But they've got a new person coming in the door that they can act on. You go to the next slide. This is what it will look like on the back end, if you will, where they're going to see all the occurrences, all the officers that are doing it, the charges that are being diverted, youth, adult, indigenous, not indigenous, that type of thing. And what we'll be able to report on, over the next few months as we start getting people in the door and using this, we're going to be we'll have complete reports on statistics of completion rates. If they started it, if they didn't start it, if they finished it successfully. Average age, what are the charges that are most popular for being diverted, things like that. Yeah, and that's it. I'm just keeping an eye on the clock there, and we're under our 10 minutes, Deputy. If there's any questions, let's have them.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Khan, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the officers involved in this presentation. I do have a question, no surprise. The way I'm looking at this and digesting the information you provided, I see an equation in this, and I see the police service as one element in the equation. I see the alleged or the accused, I don't know what the appropriate terminology would be, as a part of the equation. I see the social service agencies as part of the equation. I also see the judicial system as part of the equation. My first question would be, what is our understanding of the word diversion? I just want to make sure I understand what diversion means. I know what it doesn't include, but I don't know what it does include. It means you're not going to jail, you're not going to trial, but what does it actually mean?
Thank you for the question. When we speak of diversion, and the Ministry of the Attorney General approached us, it was a diversion, so it wasn't going to go to court. The pre-charge diversion that would go to an external agency, social agency, that they could then interact with the alleged offender. So our role in this, when we spoke with the Elizabeth Fry Society, was with the awareness of restorative justice conferences, which is a type of diversion, was that it was very strong in terms of having positive social impact as a result of participation in it for the offender, for the victim, as well as the broader community. So diversion means just redirecting the charge as opposed to court. Restorative justice conferences and the opportunity to engage in those is a type of diversion that we are working with Elizabeth Fry in diverting these cases to them, as well, hopefully in the very near future with other community organizations, to see that inclusion of the victim throughout the process, as opposed to now, which, because of finite resources across the judicial system, it's quite limited. So short answer, restorative justice conferences is a type of diversion, but diversions can include a whole host of factors. It can be complete withdrawal or non proceeding with any kind of implications for conducting the criminal act. So this was one that we were pretty specific on wanting to encourage and participate with.
So, Deputy, there may be, and again, this may be an offline conversation. I'll try and keep it to this one. There may be reasons behind, right? So the alleged or the accused, the person may be doing what they're doing for survival purposes. They need to eat, whatever it may be. I can see that one. But then there also may be the professional theft under 5,000 person who's more of a nuisance And so in terms of diversion and restorative justice, I'm assuming there's an outcome that we're looking for. Obviously, 4,000 hours of sworn officers' time is massive, and we can quantify that. At the same time, does the proprietor have the ability to change things on their end within the law to make their operation? I am of the understanding, for example, that the LCBO has a mandate. They're not allowed to send someone chasing after someone, tackle them, get the alcohol back. They're told, let it go and just report it. But there's a quantifiable impact there. So on that other side of the equation, are there measures and tools in place for both the proprietor as well as to ensure that we're not seeing, that we're working towards the goal of compliance, changed behavior on the part of the alleged or the accused?
It is a fair question, insightful too, but and I would posit this. I don't want perfection to be the enemy of the good here. So right now it goes into the justice system, and in all likelihood that is the end result, as you saw from the Toronto police, 20,000 charges. The reality here is we are involving the victim early on. And whether that's through EFRI, whether that is a letter of apology or a sit-down meeting, that opportunity doesn't exist for an extended period of time in the normal system. So we're looking at improving the police response, but as well as a social response to again, not to reduce the experience of victimization is necessarily separate than the harm that we can quantify with the crime severity index. So we are measuring the victim response with the Elizabeth Fry. They conduct a survey with the individuals that they're working with to see that we're having a measurable impact, because that is what we desire. We are not conducting a specific experiment with individuals that continue through court. We're also not directing officers that thou shalt. It is one of those where this is an option for you, and strongly consider it with respect to these types of charges. So again, if an officer is looking at a certain situation and has determined that there are other impact factors which may require this individual to continue through the typical or the normal historic judicial pattern or process, that doesn't prohibit that.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you so much for that.
Ms. Ronda and Mayor Lehman, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much for the presentation. The question that I have is just around the ability to execute this program, to resource it. And I just want to ask, how do we ensure that if we start as a police service sending everybody through to diversion, then how do we know that the Elizabeth Fry or our other organizations can handle that number of diverted people?
That is an excellent question, and one that we had quite quickly and early on with the multiple meetings that we had with the Elizabeth Fry Society, because with the selection of the two officers, in terms of we focused on the implementation on the operational end, we thought we may be looking at a quick uptake. We're not sure, but when you involve operational people who know the ins and outs and the mindset of that front line, there could have been a very quick uptake, and we are actually seeing that. Do the support agencies or do our partner agencies have the capacity? We don't control their capacity or their resources, but they have advised with support from MAG, they're ready to roll and upscale. From a community response, there's a lot of win-wins here. So we're cautiously optimistic that MAG is fully supportive with those partner agencies to properly support them on that financial end, and I think that's what you're specifically referring to.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I'm glad that we are continuing to be a partner, because I think we need to be a partner on all fronts, like to see things through to the end, and be there to support our partner organizations, because this definitely does have a winning impact for our service and for the community. And then I'd also say for even the traditional judicial system, in that they can now spend their time dealing with more of those high harm cases and put their attention to those matters as opposed to some of these other ones that maybe weren't being dealt with or were just being dismissed or whatever the case may be. So I'm very supportive of this. I'm happy to see that we're taking a lead role and that we have these partnerships. I think it's great work. And I also love this system that we were shown. It does seem very user friendly. And so I think anything that makes people's jobs easier is fantastic. So kudos to everybody on the team.
Thanks, Mr. Round. Mayor Lehman, please.
Yeah, just a quick question. What's the experience show with regards to recidivism within a diversion program? So do we see reduced recidivism, increased recidivism, no change?
So the research is showing that with lower harm offenses, and depending upon who that victim is and their involvement through restorative justice conferences, that it's not as impactful. For example, a box store or a larger corporation, there's the potential for that continued recidivism. It's actually with higher harm offenses, which we are prohibited from sending to restorative justice. That goes through the normal judicial system, and they can divert at that point later on. But there's actually great uptake and reduced recidivism and reduced victimization. So appreciating that we're leveraging the research as much as we can, with the reality that there are going to be individuals who are conducting criminal behavior for because of life circumstances, and any potential we have to influence that rather than sending them through a typical judicial system, which is overburdened, we're going to take full advantage of. So short answer is it works better for higher harm things, but we're not engaging in that. And so we're very clear, if you commit a violent criminal act in our city, that is not an opportunity for the police to divert.
Yeah, nor should it be, in my opinion. But somebody who shoplifts and goes through the traditional criminal justice system, and they've got 8 or 10 priors, all for shoplifting. Obviously, as somebody who's engaging in a pattern of behavior, we believe that diversion may help, won't help. I know it'll help in terms of our time spent, and it will release the pressure on the justice system, and that has its own community benefits because our own officers are able to apply their time to those higher harm cases. So that's a very good thing overall for the impact of the program on crime in our city. I guess what I'm wondering is, because do the individuals perceive it as, I'm going to get off lightly because I get diverted, and therefore the consequence of shoplifting is actually perceived to be less, and the pattern of offense continues? Or is it, when you're diverted into a partner organization, they are more effective at convincing people to change their behavior for whatever reason?
The potential, Mayor, for that influence is greater through the restorative justice conference. So okay. High volume individuals are high volume individuals, and it's a it depends on the actual context and the individuals involved. And people for life choices or life circumstances may be stealing to eat or stealing for
kicks. Yeah, who knows?
So the reality is, we believe, and our hope is, and it's not to exclude businesses, but for the individuals, the homeowners, where something gets, something stolen out of the backyard, there's more of an immediate and ongoing engagement with the victim right away, and for that accused to potentially be face to face with that victim and see the impact of that what would others, a low harm crime, but that experience of victimization is quite high, can be quite high for that individual whose property was stolen.
Yeah. Okay. So my quick comment would be, it has obvious benefits, and I've always been a fan of diversion programs, and I'm glad MAG is bringing one to our community. I think particularly for theft under and simple possession ultimately, and those sorts of things, this makes tons of sense from a policing and a justice system perspective. My little asterisk on it is I'd be interested to know the outcomes in terms of breaking the pattern of behavior for people who are, currently caught in or at least, repeat offenders is where I'm going with it. And it'd be interesting to know if from our pilot project, we see a change in the trajectory, if you will, of individuals who are repeat offenders under some of these minor offenses. But also great work on the system, great work on the setup. I'm glad Mag's bringing it here. Our Attorney General is our local MPP, so I imagine he'll get to see the results very directly in his own community. So thanks for this.
Thank you. I see there's more questions. Before we go there, is the board able to meet to say 10:40 today? We're running behind and we still have a number of items on the agenda. Is 10:40, is everybody available till 10:40?
No, I've got a hard stop, Mr. Chair, and I know the financial issue is still yet to come.
Yes. So I know there's more questions, but unfortunately I will have to follow up, but have to stop or move on to the agenda. Sorry about that. I will like to conclude by thanking Constables King and Graber for their work. Clearly, based on the discussion from the board, it's something of great interest and something that the board supports. And any time that we can reduce the workload, we're in favor of that. So thank you, gentlemen, for your work on this, and we do look forward to hearing back from you as things move forward with the ministry. In our package was a pay duty rate change at currently 15% to 20%. The motion is to approve the pay duty administrator fee to be increased to 20% commencing January 1 of 2022. Someone like to move that motion? Mayor Lehman, seconded by Mr. Khan. Any discussion, questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. In the package and the consent agenda, there are 4 items. Are there any questions or any items that members would like pulled for discussion from the 4: staff acknowledgement, public complaints, volunteer records check, and financial variance?
Yeah, the financial variance, Mr. Chair.
Are there any other reports to be pulled for review or comment or questions? Okay. Mayor Lehman on the financial variance.
Yeah, I did read the update, and I see the number is still a very high 1.4 million projected year end. I just wondered if we could get a little more color as to what we might reasonably expect in November and December, the mitigation efforts to produce. Are there many options left, and how are they going? We did discuss this matter when the deficit was first brought to the board's attention. But it doesn't sound like the mitigation is working. So I'm curious to know where you think it's going and what remaining options might exist to prevent that financial outcome.
Thank you very much, Mayor Lehman. For members of the board, in regards to our variance report, we are still waiting to hear back from the City of Barrie. Very likely that we will have some recovery in regards to our COVID numbers. So there will be some funds available for that. When we have the final year-end figures and confirmation of what our deficit will be, we will be drawing upon our reserves. So that will be able to assist us with some of the deficit. There will be remaining deficit for our service. My apologies. It will be a multi-year recovery regarding our deficit, which I think will be approximately $500,000, and we will be looking for strategic gapping in our staffing for the next couple of years to cover some of that deficit.
Okay, I think the answer on the COVID piece we understand, and there was a little bit of support announced in the fall economic statement, but not a lot. So I think if there's any clarity that can be brought to that, once we do get an answer on it, I mean, obviously I can follow up, but if the board could get an email, that would be a good idea. And then maybe updated numbers in December as to the retirement piece, where we think that will go in terms of the impact of it over the next couple of years. That would be helpful.
Will do.
Any other questions? Mr. Khan?
Yeah, briefly, Chief, I'm trusting we're not alone in this as a service. Just can you 10 seconds on that in terms of where we are with our variance as compared to our counterparts across other municipalities? Just, I have to trust that the province is not, unaware of this. And do we anticipate any further engagement or offerings from them to assist with this situation?
So from a provincial perspective, are you referencing the COVID-19?
Correct. The exigent circumstances around COVID-19 and the implications that this has had, whether it's on, maintenance and care in general, but yes, COVID-19.
We are working with the City of Barrie on securing that funding that will be directed to us from the provincial perspective. Other services, emergency services, including police services, have challenges associated with the cost of delivering services during COVID. So we are hopeful that that money will be directed to the city, which will then be directed to us to help with our deficit. As we enter into 2022, we have a specific line item for COVID. We didn't specifically have that for this year when we made our request to the city for our 2021 budget. As mentioned, we did have a significant number of retirements this year for our service. So we had 27 people retire from our service. Usually we see anywhere from approximately 4 to 7 individuals retire. So that's what we were budgeted for. Certainly not budgeting for 27 people leaving our service.
Chief, just, with regard to that, though, I mean, I recognize the comment around we'll try to make good through gapping and other initiatives. If our service finds a way to absorb it and absorb this in terms of the implications that it will have on future years' ability to deliver service, for example, I think we're doing the province a favor, but we're actually harming our own community by doing so in terms of the ability to affect service the way that we should in the community. So I'm curious, what is the speaking point? What is the strategy with provincial counterparts to basically remain a little bit defiant about trying to find a way to absorb that internally, this deficit position internally?
The challenges and where are we getting the support from the province? We continue to seek funding opportunities from the province, but they are specific to initiatives that we're working on or programs that have already been supported by the government in the past.
Chief Greenwood, one, I think it's a quick question. COVID has caused the great retirement.
Yes.
Is that consistent with other services? Are they seeing the same earlier retirement that Barrie Services is seeing?
There seems to be a trend, not just in the policing community, but within other industries where people are retiring earlier. When I speak to counterparts within our city that have businesses or places like the hospital, we are seeing an exit of individuals that may not have been retiring at that point in their careers.
So we're special, but not in that case.
Yes.
Any other questions for the chief or others with respect to the financial variance? Seeing none, a motion to receive the consent agenda items. Mr. Khan, seconded Mayor Lehman. No further discussion, all in favor? Thank you. Seeing Mr. Mayor, you have a couple of minutes. We still have a couple items on the agenda. Our update from Chief Greenwood and community concerns. Chief, in 2 minutes, can you give us an update, or is that not fair? We should receive it after the meeting by email or other form.
I wondered if we could go to the community concerns, if there's any items that can be discussed at the board level. The chief's update that I was going to provide is available in a PowerPoint format, so that will be posted for members of the community to view that. So why don't we use our time for community concerns?
Thank you, Chief. Open it up to the board.
Mr. Chair, yeah, thanks. I had the opportunity to bring to the senior leadership's attention some concerns that have been expressed by the downtown business community, and it was very interesting to see the presentations with regards to some of the initiatives that are going on out in the community and our own reviews. And to see some of the data that was published in the media last week and so forth. I think the disconnect here seems to be between high harm crime, which is down, and social disorder, which I believe one of our officers has referred to, the kind of antisocial behaviors that are often complained about in and around our core. And so I did want to mention that during the board meeting today. I do believe the senior command is very aware of those concerns. The reality is the numbers do not reflect an increase. In fact, they reflect a substantial decrease in crime in our downtown. But the perception of antisocial behavior is certainly higher, and it is representing something that's very frustrating to our downtown business community. So I wanted to flag it, but I'm not really looking for a response, as I've had the opportunity to bring those concerns forward in between meetings.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Anyone else? Seeing none, our next meeting is Chief. No, I guess we don't. Our next meeting is December the 9th. A motion to adjourn our meeting today. Mr. Khan. So moved. Thank you, everyone, for your time and a lot of material today, a lot of great